Something happened on Eid that the world was not ready for. While families around the globe were celebrating, exchanging greetings and sitting at dinner tables, a missile was already flying through the sky. Not a short-range missile, not a medium-range weapon, a ballistic missile with a confirmed range of 4,000 kilometers, and it was heading toward one of the most heavily fortified American military installations on the face of this earth. This is Kundi, and you are watching Pulse American News, and what I am about to tell you is not speculation. This is real. This happened, and the shockwaves from this single event are still being felt in Washington, London, Paris, and every capital across Europe right now. Let us start with the most important question. The question that has every intelligence agency in the Western world running in circles right now. How? How did Iran fire a missile that traveled 4,000 kilometers? Because up until this moment, every analyst, every intelligence report, every classified briefing handed to American and Israeli officials said the same thing. Iran's maximum missile range is around 2,000 kilometers. That was the assumption. That was the foundation of their entire defense strategy in the Middle East. And on Eid, that foundation was shattered. Iran fired on Diego Garcia. For those who do not know this name, understand what Diego Garcia is. It is a remote island base in the Indian Ocean. It sits roughly 1,600 kilometers from the Maldives, 1,900 kilometers from Sri Lanka, and about 2,700 kilometers from India. This base is not just any military outpost. It houses B-2 stealth bombers, the same aircraft capable of delivering nuclear payloads anywhere on Earth. It hosts nuclear-powered attack submarines. It has guided missile destroyers. It is a full intelligence collection hub. In short, Diego Garcia is the crown jewel of American power projection in the Indo-Pacific region, and Iran hit it. Now let the range sink in for a moment. 4,000 kilometers. If Iran can reach Diego Garcia from its own territory, then think about what else falls within that radius. London, Paris, Berlin, Rome. The entire European continent is now, for the first time in modern history, theoretically within reach of Iranian ballistic missiles. European leaders who went to sleep thinking Iran was a regional problem woke up to the realization that they may now be part of that equation. That is not a small development. That is a tectonic shift in global security. And it does not stop at range. The missile attack on Eid was not a single strike. According to reports, Iran launched 180 ballistic missiles in a single night. 180. Targets included F-35 fleet infrastructure, air command installations, intelligence headquarters, and forward military bases. The F-35, the aircraft that was called unhittable, the jet that defense contractors and military planners said could never be tracked, never be targeted, never be brought down because it does not appear on radar. Well, Iran tracked it. And the reason for that is deeply alarming for every Western Air Force on the planet. Iran appears to have used infrared tracking systems, technology that does not hunt for radar signatures but instead locks onto the heat exhaust from jet engines. This is the critical detail, because the F-35's entire warning system is built around detecting radar-based threats. When a missile approaches using infrared targeting, the F-35's onboard systems do not generate an alert. The pilot sitting in a cockpit has no idea the missile is coming until it is already too late. Iran used a weapon that the F-35 was never designed to defend against. This was not luck. This was preparation. This was a capability that had been hidden, developed in secret, and deployed at the moment of maximum impact. And here's what makes this even more staggering. Satellite imagery released in the aftermath showed billions of dollars worth of American and Israeli infrastructure turned to rubble. Decades of construction. Years of strategic investment. Gone in a single night of strikes. CNN published satellite images confirming the scale of the destruction. The numbers being discussed in financial circles are enormous. Within minutes of the news breaking, over $1 trillion was wiped from global stock markets. $1 trillion. In minutes. Now let us talk about what America did next, because the response from Washington tells you everything you need to know about how badly this has rattled the current administration. Donald Trump came out and made an announcement that no one expected on Eid. He said the United States has achieved its objectives in the Middle East. He said American forces have done what they came to do. He said it is time to think about ending military operations and moving forward. Read between those lines. That is not the language of a country that just won. That is the language of a country looking for the exit door. Trump also made another statement, one that was equally stunning. He said there is nobody left to talk to in Iran. He said Washington wants negotiations, but that Iran's leadership has been decimated and there is no one at the table. And then, in the same breath, America quietly lifted sanctions on Iranian oil. The sanctions that had been strangling Iran's economy for years, gone, lifted. Iranian oil tankers that had been sitting frozen in international waters, unable to move, unable to sell, suddenly free. Why would America lift those sanctions right now, at this exact moment? The answer is oil. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow corridor through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply travels every single day, has been effectively under Iranian control. If Iran closes that strait, global oil prices do not go to $100 a barrel. They go to $200. Food supply chains collapse. Economies that are already fragile begin to crack. Trump understands this. His entire economic agenda depends on keeping energy prices manageable. And right now, the only way to keep oil flowing is to keep Iran at the table, even if that means removing the very sanctions that were supposed to be America's greatest leverage. Japan has already moved. The Japanese Prime Minister traveled to meet Trump personally. Tokyo needs its tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan is an island nation with almost no domestic energy supply. Every drop of oil it uses comes through that corridor. Japan started direct negotiations with Iran, not through Washington, not through NATO, but directly, asking Tehran to allow Japanese vessels safe passage. Think about what that means. A major American ally is quietly cutting separate deals with a country that America is at war with, because they have calculated that Washington cannot guarantee their security in that waterway anymore. NATO declined to get involved. Multiple European nations refused to commit forces. The alliance that was supposed to present a unified front fractured quietly, country by country, each government doing its own math and deciding that this was not a fight they wanted. And so now you have this extraordinary situation. Dozens of nations opening back-channel communications with Tehran, asking for terms, looking for accommodation, because the old assumption that America's military power would deter Iran has been replaced by something new. China's been watching all of this unfold with considerable satisfaction. Beijing has been buying Iranian oil for years at discounted prices, sanctions or no sanctions. Now that the sanctions are being lifted, that supply becomes even more accessible. Russia has been in a similar position. The lifting of oil-related restrictions on Moscow was also done under the pressure of tight supply. The war in the Middle East has functionally been an economic gift to the China-Russia-Iran axis. All three nations are profiting. All three nations have an interest in this conflict continuing, not escalating to full nuclear exchange, but continuing at exactly the level where Western economies feel the strain and their own positions are strengthened. Iran's conditions for any ceasefire have been made very clear. They want American military bases removed from the region. They want compensation for the destruction done to their country. They want the blockades and economic pressures lifted permanently. These are not small asks. These are demands that would fundamentally reshape the American footprint in the Middle East, a footprint that has been built over 50 years and cost trillions of dollars to construct and maintain. Trump is caught between two impossible positions. If he agrees to Iran's terms, he hands his political opponents the narrative that America retreated. If he refuses and continues the military campaign, oil hits $200 a barrel. The stock market continues its collapse, and the American economy enters a period of severe turbulence heading into the next political cycle. The Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, are watching this with growing anxiety. Trump has essentially told them that if they will not fight, they are on their own. He has communicated, through both public statements and private channels, that Washington's patience for protecting nations that refuse to commit their own forces is running thin. These governments built their entire security architecture on the assumption that American military power would always be the guarantor of last resort. That assumption is being questioned out loud for the first time. What Iran demonstrated on Eid is something that goes far beyond a single missile test or a single military strike. It demonstrated that the intelligence picture that Western powers had built about Iranian capabilities was fundamentally wrong. For years, the assumption was that sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and occasional covert operations were successfully keeping Iran's military technology at a manageable level. One night of strikes exposed that as a fiction. Iran had been building, quietly, systematically, underground missile cities, facilities that have never been shown publicly, stockpiles that nobody in Washington had counted. One-eyed 80 missiles in a single night from a country that American officials were saying had run out of munitions. This is what Pulse America News has been covering, the real story. The story that goes beyond the headlines and into the strategic depth of what is actually happening in the world right now. The rules that govern military conflict in the Middle East for the past 3 decades have changed. The technology gap that Western nations relied upon has been narrowed in ways that nobody was prepared for. And the political will to sustain an open-ended military campaign is visibly collapsing in real time. What happens next? Whether Iran presses its advantage, whether a negotiated framework emerges, whether the Strait of Hormuz becomes the defining flashpoint of this decade. That is the story we will be watching and bringing to you here on Pulse America News. Stay connected, stay informed, because in a world moving this fast, what you do not know can change everything.